Hi everyone, being real for once here, and it's time for a review of this new Jefre Cantu-Ledesma album, Gift Songs. This is the newest full-length album from ambient and drone artist Jefre Cantu-Ledesma, and I'm hoping I'm saying that name somewhat right. Anyways, I would say what number release that this album is within his discography, but he has like well over 20, maybe 30 albums at this point, with his earliest project dating as far back as 2005. So, needless to say, this artist has been in the game for a good while now, and to be completely upfront with y'all about my experience with Jefre, it is pretty much next to none. I've heard positive things about releases like Love is a Stream and also the In Summer EP, but I never really rushed to check out any of his stuff. Maybe that's because he has a lot of albums, and as a result, it became kind of difficult to get into his overall body of work. Maybe it's because he infuses his ambience with some noisier genres like shoegaze into the mix, so it may come off as less accessible. Maybe it's because I'm still somewhat new to the ambient genre as a whole. Whatever the case may be, I ultimately decided to check out this new album of his right here, Gift Songs, and I'll be honest, it's mostly because of the album cover. In short, I think it's a really great album cover. It's a pretty straightforward one, seeing as it's just some blue flowers and grass, but I feel like the color palette of this photo right here really appeals to me in some strange way, so yeah, that's probably the only reason why I checked this album out. Now, Gift Songs is a pretty straightforward album, 5 tracks at around 40 minutes, but half of that runtime is spent on the opening track, The Milky Sea, so let's go ahead and talk about that song first. Essentially, this track is very sparse pianos backed by this drone and light skittering percussion. It feels like listening to the song is like sitting by a window listening to the soft raindrops fall onto the roof. At around the 15-minute point, it transitions into a mostly percussion-led segment, but it still feels just as relaxing as the rest of the track. Now, okay, this might be somewhat of an odd comparison, but I'd say that this track reminds me of, like, I don't know, the softer moments off of last year's A Lonely Sinner by Samuel R.C. Like, if you listen to the opening of, like, FeatherYoshi, you might get an understanding of what the Milky Sea sounds like, to me at least. The next 3 tracks are a lot more straightforward, which with each one being around 3 to 4 minutes in length. They're these impressionism pieces that, while maybe not as sonically adventurous as the previous Milky Sea, still make for a very relaxing backdrop. Finally, the album closes with the 9-minute long river that flows both ways. It's basically a drone track, and if I can bring up another odd comparison point, the way this track progresses and the drones being used here kind of reminds me of the drone piece that is off of Public Strain by Women. Yeah, not the first thing that really popped into the average person's head, but however you hear this track, it makes for a very nice closer. And yeah, that's pretty much Gift Songs. Not the most complicated album out there to explain. I imagine that this will end up being one of my shorter reviews in general. I guess if I can bring up one final point is that I mentioned earlier that Jefre likes to infuse his ambience with noisier genres, and by the looks of it, Gift Songs is by far and away the least noisy album of Jefre so far, with basically no signs of like shoegaze or noise or whatever else. If you're looking for like another Love is a Stream or something like that, odds are you might be somewhat disappointed by this, but if you're like me who just wants some nice piano-led ambient pieces that'll tickle some sort of itch that's hard to describe, I think there's a lot to like about Gift Songs, and as of right now, it is my favorite album of 2025, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself. And yeah, that'll do it for this review. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope y'all check this album out if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Bye.